Good morning, good morning, good morning. Waiting for Mr. Gene Pope to pop in. We're scheduled for a 10 o'clock chat. There he goes. Yes, sir.
Ta-da!
Then there's magic.
Oh, man. What a yo-yo ride, right?
How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. It's so nice to see you again.
Likewise, brother. So, we were initially supposed to talk last week,
Yeah,
and had this whole 9/11 question set up for you, but I still want to know the answer to it, so I'm still going to ask.
sure.
So, everybody remembers 9/11 in their own way, and they all have their own experience from it. But it's not so much for me what we went through, it's the after. How do we heal? And so what I wanted to know from you was, what did you take away from that experience?
Well, it's a good question. There's several issues there. I think the first one was the idea that whenever something cataclysmic like that happens to a group of people or a country, that it's always amazing to me to see everybody all of a sudden, no matter their party affiliation, whatever, come together in ways that warms your heart and makes you wonder, why can't we simply be like this all the time?
Yes.
But I guess, what we're really looking at is the survival instinct, the very strong survival instinct where differences are put away. If you think about it, though, humanity, when it was much younger, right? And we were out in the plains and the caves and everything like that. And, our average lifetime was in the 30s or something like that.
Right.
We were kind of in that crisis situation all the time, and we had to band together or not survive. And I think that that's one of the lessons you get from that. I think that in terms of coping, I think that I can, when I've thought about it, I said, I can imagine any major disaster like that's, whether it was war, like a world war or things like that. I don't think you ever forget it. It's there. You have to go on with your life, and you do. But there are times when, like for me, watching some of the documentaries, it literally, my heart rate went up, and tears started flowing. I just got sucked right back as if it was the same day, because it was it was so traumatic and so unexpected. And you don't wish it on anybody, but yes, the people who have, those of us who lived through it, it's different than people who were, let's say, born then, and now 20 years old, and it's like, but I understand. When I was a student growing up, when I was young, it was like, we kind of learned about, let's say, the Holocaust, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't, as someone who didn't live through it, I was having such a hard time understanding, how could this happen? And why would people do this? Why would humanity do something like this? And it took quite a few years of studying and studying and studying behind what happened to fully understand and say, oh, I see now how something like this, like people could actually turn to doing something like this. And I think 9/11 isn't just another example of that. It's just another example of extreme events, extreme ways of thinking. But that the good thing to take out of it is that we in the United States, we can get together anytime we want to. We've proven that. The analogy that I was going to bring up last week was the analogy between a situation like 9/11, where you have this titanic cataclysm happen,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody sees it happening, bang, right, like that. And comparing that to a disaster like the coronavirus, and And the things that go through my mind are things like, well, at that point back then, 3,000 people died, but the deaths of those 3,000 people at 9/11 was so galvanizing, it affected everybody. And yet here we are in a pandemic, and it isn't the same as planes going in and blowing up buildings and seeing the destruction. It's like a slow bleed, but it's not a slow bleed. It's 660,000 people have died. I mean, I'm having a very hard time with that because I think that, I believe the statistic is that that's more people than have died in all the wars we were in.
Yeah.
And here we are with this situation with, if you will indulge me, I wrote an editorial into the New York Times during this past week. I don't necessarily, they don't accept everything, so it's like I wrote it to get it off my chest. But what it was entitled, which has to do what we're talking about, is COVID-19 versus drunk driving. And the point I was trying to make was, it's legal in this country to drink, right? It's not prohibition anymore. You can drink. You can drink to excess. You can drink whatever you want. Drink, drink, drink. And that's fine. If you're drunk and you get into a car and you drive it and you kill a person because you were drunk driving, suddenly it's not legal. It's not legal. You're killing someone because of your incapacitation, or you're not thinking clearly, or whatever the decisions you make. You're free in this country to make the decisions you make. Some of them are going to have consequences.
Right. And
then I was comparing that to, let's say, if a person decides not for something other than health reasons, there's health reasons, of course, but just not to get vaccinated. And I realized that that's very similar to the drunk driver, because you're free to have an opinion about whether you take a vaccination or not. That's your right, so far. But if you don't, and you have the part of the disease which is asymptomatic, and you're wandering around for 3 days, and you get in contact with people, and then they maybe get in contact with people, and then they maybe get in contact with people. When you're drunk in the car, you're going to hit one, God forbid, you might hurt or kill one person or one car. With the coronavirus, you could be vectoring off and hurting and damaging the systems, lives, everything, families of multiple people.
Sure.
And that's why the number gets up to 650,000 people dead. So for me, I'm not here saying, well, I'm not saying what you should do, but I am saying that I think you should consider that what becomes the difference then between you spreading a virus to multiple people, and they could die from it, and you drinking, which is fine, but then getting into a car knowing that that's not a smart thing to do and it could kill someone.
Yeah.
And
the only difference with that is that there's narrative spinning the coronavirus stuff. People don't know what to believe because of lack of education. So people are spiraling all over the place in what they know about the coronavirus.
Yes, there's always that disinformation there. That's the disinformation. That's a whole nother story. Oh my God. By the way, I have a quick question for you, by the way. When you were, it's just I'm laughing, when you sent out the original invitation for me to come on, and it's like, you could say, hey, it's Gene is a real hot dog, but I'd love to have him on, so he's coming on. It's like, I'd be fine with that. But it's like, when you were talking about me as a Titan, were you referring to my, like, COVID weight gain or something? I didn't understand what you were saying. It was like, I mean, yes, I've had a little of that, but
you are highly respected and regarded as an artist in my book, and so I view you as a Titan. And I receive nothing but positive vibes from you, brother, and I will always have the utmost respect for you. So you are a Titan in my world.
Well, I thank you. I have mutual respect for you as well.
Oh, thank
By the
you.
way, I wanted to ask you a question. I've been seeing a lot of posts of you with friends at was it a Pennsylvania hospital?
Yeah,
Is that a
yes.
learning hospital or is that a hospital hospital?
It's a hospital, but also a learning hospital.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see. Okay, cool.
it's attached to the University of Pennsylvania. And
And what was it sounded like something that you were saying goodbye to people or something like that, or are you leaving, or you're going? What I'm not sure. I don't understand the story behind. I'd love to know the story behind
okay.
what you do there.
So there's two sides to Chike. Chike is in the medical world, and then there's, Chike, the journalist slash entertainer slash whatever else I decide to be. And the medical side is me working for the University of Pennsylvania Hospital. I'm working anesthesiology. I'm an anesthesia tech, which I'm now transitioning into dentistry. So next week will be my last week at the hospital, and I'm transitioning over into dentistry.
Wow,
Yeah.
congratulations! Then that's really
Thank you.
cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, step by step. But it's like I hope you'll be one of those dentists that like does use analgesic air because man, it's great. There are fewer and fewer dentists using nitrous oxide, and it's like, man, I'll tell anybody who listens, it's like, it's a trip.
Listen, I will be since we're talking honest, and people need to be aware of certain things, and I'm all
Yeah.
about education. So this is my experience with that. I have issues when it comes to any oral surgery. I have extreme phobias and issues, and I could sit and talk about it all day. So I had an experience where I had to have surgery because I had an exposed jawbone. So I had to go in, and they were giving me the option of my anesthetic. They gave me options. And then they mentioned the nitrous. So I said, well, what is that? And they said, well, they call it laughing gas. You don't really laugh. You just forget about everything. I said, oh, that sounds nice. They said, you won't care about what's going on at all. I said, yeah, that option. I want that. Let's try that. And for a small fee, you
Yeah.
can get the nitrous. And can I tell you, what a trip. What a trip. And the next thing I know, it was over. And I was like, wow, that was quick and easy and painless. I loved it. What they didn't tell you is that the come down. I was depressed for 2 weeks
Oh,
after.
oh, oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I'm sorry. I never had that reaction. I had an initial, well, let's because this was like 30 years ago. And at the time I was a little more of a controlling person. I have to
Mm.
say, I didn't want to release control to somebody else or something else easily. And so when I first got analgesic air, there was that moment where it's like it's pulling you down, and I'm like, no, no, ah! Yeah, and and then it's like, and then I learned to just release into it, and it's fine. Nothing's going to happen. You're just going to be mellow as hell. But no, I can't say that when I've gotten out of it that I felt one way or another. So I guess everybody, the dentist who I've known for many years, he did say that everybody is different under analgesic air.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely unique, different dosage, different effects. And he says, they don't even really teach you about everything about it. You really have to learn it on your own. Was his on it.
And there are some people that are actually allergic, and they have allergic reactions. Working in the medical field, I've seen a lot, I've learned a lot, and I'm so appreciative for, those experiences. So,
Yeah.
did I answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I think it's great because it just shows, there's variety in everything, and even whether it's a medical or something that brings you joy or something that makes you high or gets you down. I mean, it's like it's the variety is infinite, and you really just have to go with the flow to expect that to happen. you know, and it does. But, you know, I mean, and then there's extreme events like going through a pandemic and you're locked up and you're fearful. And at first you think it's like, I can't even touch the mailbox. Jesus F, you know, what am I going to do here? And it was like, you know, and you're going through the roads and there's nobody on the roads at all. And there's birds chirping and you realize I can't hear any jet planes or anything. And, you know, it's just that realizations. But at the same time, it's kind of like, you know, I mean, God forbid, you know, thank God we're well, we're being careful, and, you know, that there's no guarantee of anything, but we're being as careful as we can. But this is, it gives you a moment to turn around and say, you know, this is a vast planet, and the birds are singing louder now, and there's more chipmunks running through the yard, and it's almost like they're saying, ha ha ha, it's our time now, you know? You guys are not threatening us anymore, so we're going to have some fun, you know? Yeah. And then you look at it and you go, well, that's awesome, you know? We're not the only ones here, you know? All God's children and animals, you know, they have a free reign on this earth as well.
Well, you know, I've often said this amongst my friends, and I always looked at this situation as the earth cleansing itself. You know, the earth is a living thing too. People don't look at it that way, but this big rock is living. It's breathing. It's giving us vibration, and we have to.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's like right now. I think parts of the earth are like are asking for a big Benadryl. You know, it's like
yeah,
an allergy attack. These humans, you know. It was also, you know, one of the things I carried, you know, because I was around when it was all the protests were about the population bomb, up like this, and it's fascinating to me to see everything that's being discussed now about how to improve our Earth and everything else, and when you really get down to the nitty-gritty, the reason for everything that's going on, whether it's CO2 levels, whether it's fire, smoke, whatever, it tends to always come back to the same thing. It's that there are more of us on this earth than there ever have been. And at a certain point, no ecosystem can withstand the strain of just too many of one particular species on the planet. And now, you know, you don't want to think about that too much, because it's like, no, well, we have to go back into a cave. No, nothing like that. But I think that we have to simply be aware that the biggest thing we have to fear is ourselves, because as they did many times with rat studies back when I was younger, in scientific studies, is that if they crowded too many rats together in a certain square footage, that they would get violent, they would start hurting each other, and I feel that there's parallels between those studies and humanity, in a sense, you know?
I agree. I totally agree. Wow, we always go so deep, and I never really get to, like, I feel like every time I talk to you, we go down this tangent and we talk about these amazing things, but I never get a chance to really be a geek with you and get into my geekdom about you.
Oh, so well, geek away.
So, I'd like to know, what was your first artistic inspiration?
Whoa. Okay. Well, that's it. Well, I'll be honest with you. It was, at first, it was music. In other words, there was a time in my life. Oh boy, I was an only child, and you know, my father was out working all the time. I didn't see a heck of a lot of him. Unfortunately, my mother was sick and couldn't be at home, so it was me and the nanny. So let's just say that I had to find my own worlds pretty much to entertain myself. And the first thing I did was I had like a 78 record player, right? I had an old record player. I mean, old record player, 78s, not even 33s. And I remember the first time I was captivated with this story, which was, it was a story about a dog named Muffin. And of course, because it was a 78, it was only about 5 minutes max, right, on one whole side. And and the story was just about a dog named Muffin and how it was in the city, and there was this fire engine that came by and the noise scared it, and it just talked about this little dog. And everything had a happy ending and everything, but I would sit there. I was so enthralled with this little 5-minute story that I literally would sit there and put the needle back, listen to it, put the needle back, listen to it, do it over and over again, and the next day repeat until I could recite the whole thing. And I remember my father telling me once, he said, "We were worried about you. We weren't sure what was going on, but you were awfully obsessed with that record player." And then now you flash forward a little bit, and for me, and I used to listen to a lot of classical music because there wasn't a lot of rock and roll at the time. And then when before the Beatles came in, but definitely when the Beatles came, I was like, grow my hair out, and my father said, get a haircut. And it was like, the rebellion was on, but I was into music so much. It was like, I had this little thing where a new music, top 40 radio was the rage. And so you'd listen to all these songs that were coming in, and I would bet my friends, I bet you I can pick out every song that's going to be a #1 hit. And so I'd be listening to the music, and I think it was Mamas and Papas. It was one of their songs came out, and I think it was Monday.
Okay.
What a memory. And it was like, that's going to go to #1. The first time I heard it, that's going to go to #1. And I would do that over and over, and I realized that there was something that I was glued into, to listening to music and saying, the populace will like this.
Right.
Everybody is going to like this song. And that continued, and then until I started to get into doing plays in high school, where I started using the idea of understanding what other people would like, not giving them what they want necessarily, but acting. I was such a geek. You talk about geeking out, and it's like, I was such a science math geek and I was so afraid of girls. I was so afraid of girls. Very shy. It's like I literally, if I haven't told you the story already, but this is a true story. It's been in movies already, but way before the movies. If I had to call a girl, I would first write down on a piece of paper exactly what I was going to say. Because once the girl would go, hello, I would just go blank. Don't know what to say. And so I would refer to my notes. This is so sad. And so I needed some way of figuring out how to get over the girls, getting over the fear of socializing with girls. And so what happened was, I went into, I said, the school was having a play, and it was a boys' school and a girls' school right next to each other. And girls' school would often ask for boys to come in and try out, because lots of plays have boys and girls. So we would interchange that way. But never the twain shall meet otherwise. But at any rate, there was a play, The Importance of Being Earnest. And it had a part called Algernon. And Algernon is this outgoing, wise-ass, bon vivant, whatever. And so we all tried out for different parts, and I had a best friend called Jimmy. Jimmy was an extrovert. I mean, he would go up to a girl, and they'd just go, ah, So he had no problem in that department, and I was like, hi. And so I went over to try out with him for this part of Algernon. And I thought he did a great job. And I did the best I could, but, it was like kind of a wet rag. I don't know. It wasn't that good. And then God bless this director. She turned around after a few days and posted the parts. And all of a sudden, it's like, I got Algernon. And I'm like, Jimmy was Algernon. Jimmy was definitely Algernon. I'm not an Algernon. It was interesting to try it, but it's like, how can I do now? So I went up to her and I said, why did I get this part? Why didn't you give him that part? Jimmy is like Algernon. And she said, and this I've always remembered to be true. She said, you saw the performance he did? It was a good performance. That's the best performance he'll probably do all the way through till we go on. You, however, can grow. And you are going to grow into this part. And of course, it's supposed to be a learning experience. So that was the other reason for her, was that you are the one that's going to, I'm the clay I'm going to mold and show you how to become an Algernon. So what did it do for me? What it did for me was acting became a way for this little nerd to become safely, because I'm not trying to be me, I'm somebody else. Yeah. I can take that part and just throw it away and say, was just playing a part. It's not me, I was just playing a part. But it started to rub off as I started to play more parts like that. It started to rub off on me and I became more confident.
Okay.
And so that was between the music. Music ended up being a very big part of my life. And I didn't realize it at the time, but acting had put its spell on me. And then at the same time, I had a friend whose father had a darkroom, a film darkroom in his house, and he was nice enough to teach me all about photography and developing your own photos and stuff like that. So you see with the pattern that's coming here, it's like audio, visual, acting. Yeah. Then it's like, and I kind of repeated that as I stepped up and did different job opportunities, was to just keep concentrating on those, doing what I knew. Mm-hmm. You know? And being a geek at the same time, it's like I understood technically what was going on a lot too. And then somehow I got here talking to you, you know.
So with all of these pieces, right, separately, you have all these interests separately. And you said you kept repeating that throughout your life. So when you discover film, movies, is it like I can give all of my desserts at once? Is it like a conversion of everything that you love at once? Did it feel that way?
Yes, and the result of it was that I realized that I had this overpowering urge. It doesn't matter psychologically where it came from, but I had this overpowering urge to want to tell stories to people, to say things to people, to give an example, you know, make a parody, make anything, you know, make people laugh. Right. Okay. So I ended up being a director in the 1980s, and I ended up being a bi-coastal television commercial director. So that was some sort of the icing on the cake, because by being a director, then I got to see exactly every role that was played in filming. Therefore, in the position that I am now, I know what I want. I know what's good. I know what's not so good.
Right.
And so I'm going for the people that work on the team that whose work I admire so much that as I've always said to people, I always want to work with people that I could never do it as well as they can. Doesn't matter, right? You have the confidence to work with people that are smarter than you, so that you can keep learning and let them do what they do best, and then you do what you do best, right?
Very smart, very smart. What is your favorite? Some of your favorite films? Like what films? Like, do you have a film that gets you every time? Like every time that you watch it, it hits you in the same spot every time, no matter how many times you watch it.
That's always a tough question for me, because I used to always start to get a little like, uh-oh, somebody's asked me that question now, because I'm better at remembering the experience of a film than I am remembering the damn title, which is funny. But I would say that I guess some of the films that I've enjoyed watching the most are those that were complex enough that it takes several viewings just to appreciate and discover all the new detail. It's like, oh, look what they did. Oh, oh, now I see. And you're getting in the mind of the director, and you see, of the writer especially. And you go, oh, I see, I got that. So there's been so many films that I've really liked. Well, for instance, I mean, one of the last films that, I mean, modern times, it's like that I really, really adored. It was actually, to me, it was like a long film, but it was a series. It was Queen's Gambit, the Queen's Gambit. I was so struck with everything about that production, the writing, the acting, that was, you know what it is when a film pulls you in enough that you're in the film and you're going along for the ride and you're just accepting everything that's coming at you. You're not sitting there going, nah, I don't buy that. Nah, that was stupid. Bah. You know, when you're just going along for the ride and you're going, whoa. Films like that were like, I mean, when I was young, Easy Rider was a transcendental film for me because I was young when I saw it. I mean, this is the ironic thing for me that I still find fascinating and kind of humorous, is that the United States has become more hung up on ratings of the films and what happens in films. And back then, Easy Rider was a PG-13 film, and it had full frontal nudity and bad language and all kinds of things. And flash forward to now, and you know, after we have the first F-bomb, we're allowed one F-bomb to have a PG-13 movie. You have more than one F-bomb, it's an R-rated movie. And I'm going, if they understood it the first time, it's not going to corrupt them the second and third and fourth. What is going on here? You know, that so much has changed that way. But back then, I guess, whatever, they were experimenting with the rating system. But that movie, as well as Five Easy Pieces, really got to me. And then I saw a movie where it was like, what was like, the first movie that I got queasy in was Bonnie and Clyde. Because, yeah, after they did the bad hold up and they're bleeding in the car and stuff like that, and I you hadn't seen stuff like this, and I was literally getting nauseous in the theater.
Wow. Yeah, that scene was pretty brutal for the time period.
Yeah. And there was a lot of that experimenting going on. The Man Who Fell from Space with David Bowie. That was, for the time, you watch that movie today, it's hard R. It's a hard R movie. And back then it was like a light R, you know. Stanley Kubrick, of course, you know, his films, you know, are just, his best ones are incredible. I actually, when I was in college, and I was I'm trying to remember the name of the one with the all the ultra violence in it. I can't give it right now. I can't remember it right now. But anyway. There was, not many people know that movie's rated R now, but the first version that came out was rated X because it was so sexual and so violent. And I actually saw, just by dumb luck, you know, my geeky friends and I in college, we ran to the theater and went to the first performance of, it's on the tip of my tongue now, I'll think of it, of this Kubrick film. And we were sitting there, and it was like, oh my God, it was, again, getting a little nauseous, you know. It was like, wow. And, but it was still an astounding movie. Kubrick had a way of going so deep into things, but there's so many good directors. Robert Altman. I love Robert Altman films because one of the things that he does is, I remember with King of Knives, one reviewer mentioned and said, you know, sometimes it's better if we don't see the result of something not good happening. You know, you should just leave it to our imagination. Don't hit us over the head with it. And it's like, that's a fair review. But I remember distinctly one of the things I was thinking of with this film was, Robert Altman's, it's called The Wedding. Very hard to find the movie now. It's not streaming many places. But it was, the thing about Robert Altman as a director was he would be portraying a story and it's like, oh, it's funny. It's like a pseudo comedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then 3/4 of the way through the movie, bam, bam, out of nowhere, something happens. And since this movie is hard to find, I'll tell you what the plot point is, just because it's a good example of what I'm talking about. Is that this was a star-studded movie, Mia Farrow, everything, and it was called The Wedding, or A Wedding, whatever. And it was this movie that made fun of a very privileged bourgeois wedding.
Okay.
And basically what kind of asses were, in this wedding. And then you're going along and you're enjoying the movie and it's funny and you're going, yeah, right, yeah, look at that, wow, far out. And then about almost near the end of the movie, the bride and groom, the car is prepped for the bride and groom to drive off into the sunset, right, with all the cans on it and all. And then some people go back inside, they come out, and the car's gone. It's like, oh, they left already. Damn, we didn't get the picture, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden there's I can't remember the exact sequence, but there's like a police report. You got to get over here right now on the highway. And you're in a theater, right? So the screen is huge. The next thing you know, you're on the highway and you're driving up to what looks like a gas tanker exploding and just flames coming out everywhere. And it was a very unique car that they were driving off in, and the car is wedged underneath the tanker. There's no way that whoever's in there got out alive, and you actually are standing there, you're sitting there in the theater, and you're going in utter shock, reacting to, oh my God, after all this about the wedding party's dead? They're dead? And you're sitting there going, oh my God, out of nowhere, you're looking at this scene. Well, then it turns out that the bridegroom and whatever, a couple of the side players had actually taken off in the car, and they were the ones that were dead. The bride and groom were fine. And it was just, ha, gotcha, But the way he gotcha, you see what I'm saying? So that also left an impression on me, and I was thinking of that when we did that Daniel scene in King of Knives.
Yes. Yeah.
That la la la, you think you know, bam,
Yeah.
Frank loses, he flashes back, and this is what happens. Have I answered your question?
No, you did. You did.
There's so many though. Yeah.
An artist that I revere, and I often wonder what inspires them to do some of the things that they do. That's why I asked you that question.
It's I freely admit that there's a part of, I think, in a lot of actors I've met, good actors I've met, there's a certain amount of wanting to be seen. There's a certain part of enjoying being someone else.
Yes.
So much fun to be someone else and without consequence. There's also that part of it's a challenge. It's one of the most insane challenges you can possibly do, is you're transforming yourself into somebody else. And when I see Gary Oldman do his work, it's like, wow. The transformation, and there's lots of actors like him, but he is one of the very, very finest character actors ever. Yeah. And he's an incredible role model, because when you see him in an interview, he's just kind of quiet, quiet. He's this quiet guy. It's like yeah, Chike, yeah, I like that. And that's what, and then he's like, oh, and all these different parts, and it's amazing to see. But so that variety, that's cool.
Yeah. So King of Knives. You mentioned it. Tell me more about King of Knives. I've interviewed you on this film, probably this is the third time.
Yeah, something like that.
Knives, and it's that good. Tell me about the birth of King of Knives, for you.
Okay, And we should leave a little time because I have a surprise to talk to you about.
Oh.
What's coming. But
Oh.
anyway, King and Ives. So as projects like this often do, it always comes from sort of like, you look back and you go, gee, how did the universe do that? It just kind of connected everybody in a certain way. So the bottom line was, I was in a play with Lindsay Joy. We did a night of 3 short plays, and she was in one play, I was in another play. I got to meet her. I was fascinated with her stuff, and I wanted to see more of her writing, so she sent me some of her works, and she had won awards, and so at some point, and then in the meantime, over a period of 3-4 years, I'd done a bunch of short films. So that's the dress rehearsal stuff, right? It's like you're seeing what you can do. And then it was time, I felt that it's time to make a feature. And it's like, oh God, it's time to make it. And, but it all came down to the story. And so Lindsay and I started talking about, as we always said, we closed out restaurants for about a year. I mean, we'd go out to eat and talk. And she would take notes or what have you, but we would go into a restaurant at 7 o'clock at night, and all the tables are upside down by the time we were finished talking, and we were still cranking. And as she said, King and Ives was a combination of what I went through. I had a very early midlife crisis. I'd say my late 30s. My late 30s was when I started a screw got a little loose there. In addition, Lindsay wanted to understand more about her own father, who I guess went through a similar thing. And so it was with that goal of understanding what happened, that we started to talk about all these things that have happened in our lives, and what kind of a story that could be. And that's where that's basically at its rawest form, that's where King and Ives came from. And then at a certain point, when you're putting together a story like that, it no longer comes from the seed of what you know and what you've experienced in life. You know, it was an interesting thing I saw on a site one time. They were talking about, for writers, some writers like to say, write about what you know. Write about what you know. And then there are others who say another thing, and that is write about who you are. And I like that one because I think that if you base the writing and the dialogue on your vantage point, who you are, you have a very rich well to drink from. And that's what Lindsay basically did, is that she just took this tremendous well of life that she, like everything about life, she picks up and puts it here, puts it here, puts it here. And that comes forth. And then she has this, I don't think I've ever told this, but it's like she's got this roulette machine when she writes. And so seriously, but it's like, it's like, so she has a sentence that she has something she has to say, and she's going to say it. And now she could just say it to you and I, like we're talking to each other. But no, instead she puts it through the machine, right? The roulette machine. And it comes out in a way that's unique. And you go, oh, I never thought. And that is one of the things that people react to with King and Ives, even from a script standpoint, is the dialogue is so interesting and unique, because there's many times you can watch TV series, let's say, and some movies, and if you're talking about sex, it's the same old tropes that people are talking about. Lindsay always finds a way of putting a twist on it, about how to say it, how do you describe it, and that's what keeps the interest up, because your brain is going no. Whoa, what? And she loves to tip, like as she says herself, she loves to kick out the chair. Yeah. And she does that, and it's something that I definitely encourage. And if there have been a couple of times, and even with this new script, where it's like, I don't think we're doing the old kick the chair out enough here. I think we got to kick a little harder. Trust me, It'll be good. Let's kick it a little harder. And then she does, and then it comes back, and it's like there's one leg of the chair left. You know? So, but that's where the film always starts with the word, and then what sort of happens then is I start reading the script, let's say once a week, something like that. This is way in advance, and I'm constantly visualizing it's like when I was listening to that album with that dog, Muffin, right? I'm visualizing, I realize this goes all the way back to that. I would visualize what was actually happening, how it's, here's the dog, it's in the street, there comes a fire engine, and the dog, whatever, runs upstairs and trips and whatever. It's the same thing when I'm reading a script. I'm reading the script, and it's like playing out in images in my mind. I don't consider myself the best writer in the world, but what I do know is a good thing I can do is to visualize pictures. Very active imagination, and then so I combine that, and that's how basically the film starts getting built. And then you bring in all the people that are smarter than you at what they do, which is how you have a successful film. So you get a director who can direct better than you. You get a director of photography who's better than you could ever do. No matter how geeky you are, and that's what adds the extra layers, and because filming is layers. It's not just a wall and you do it. So it's true. Where are you? What is the camera movement? What part of the performance are you emphasizing and are you not? What are the props doing? What do they accomplish? Is everything doing something? You know, right? Everything's got to work for that, and that's basically King of Knives was the first attempt to work with that kind of philosophy. Is that because when you look again, if you look back at films that really are interesting and deep, that's what you see. Is that I look at it especially, and I look at it, I go, oh wow, you know. That scene with the pills and they spilled all over the floor. It could have just spilled, but no, it had to spill all over the floor to magnify what the hell has just happened. And I always sit there in abject admiration at the filmmakers who are making use of every element of what film can be. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think I'm the only filmmaker that gets a little peeved when it's like there were it was kind of funny. There was like a couple of people I bumped into recently, and they said, "Oh, you know, I actually saw that on Amazon, King of Knives. That's your film, huh? Oh yeah. Oh, I'm gonna watch that tonight on the plane." It's like I'm, you know, I on the plane. I was like, yeah, I'll just watch it on my phone. And they go, no, don't watch it on your phone. No, don't, please. So much work, and that's one of the things that is a shame about King of Knives, that we weren't able to get a theatrical release, because that film, when you put it on a big screen, everything is different. Because you're looking into what is happening in the scene, and you're starting to notice things in a different way. And of course, the color and everything, and it just has an impact on you that's very difficult to reproduce, especially on a phone. But even on a good sized TV, it's when you get into a theater and you see this film, you are in it. You are absolutely in what's happening to these people, and there's a difference there. So that's why, honestly, you'll see a certain style of shooting that, to expedite, of course, a TV show, but there's a certain type of framing you do there versus if you're going to shoot for a theater. And because you can afford with the theater to have more in the frame, because the eye will be drawn naturally and focus in on this, this part right there, and all of a sudden you're looking over here and what's happening over here. So that's the better experience of watching in a theater, I think, and I hope we get back to that.
Yeah, me too. I miss the theater. So
big time.
This show is called Conversations with Chike Evans, right? So I'm very good at listening. And you said a bit earlier, reading the new script, I did not just let that pass. So there's a new script?
Yes, we have We have what I'll call the official first draft, but it's actually more than that. It's a very good draft. We've been working on King of Knives 2 for 2 years now.
Wow.
And well, you know, it takes the time, you know, and Lindsay, I'm just going to cut to the quick here, but Lindsay has outdone herself and taking this next step. Because it was always, when we finished the first film, it was always the intent. Like, yeah, now that this thing blows up, now what happens? What happens to all these interesting people? What the heck happened? And Lindsay has gone over the moon with her interpretation of where all these people are going and what's going to be happening. We have a tentative title, which I'll announce for the first time here, but it's tentative. It's not the final title, but we're tentatively calling it Queen of Knives, so that you have the king and queen next to each other. They go together, like on a chessboard. Yeah. But there's other reasons for Queen of Knives, and which will be, and so I don't want to reveal a damn thing about the movie because it's, all I can say is there's a whole bunch of the original cast coming in. They've all tentatively, you know, they have to talk to their agents and all, but they tentatively said, yes, I want in. So, which was very gratifying. And it's like, you know, John Delgado is going to direct again. Patrick Lillis is going to be there, you know, working with the actors again. And there's a few others, but they're not locked in, but they've shown a lot of interest. And I'm like, it's happening. It's happening. And the thing that I'm so grateful about is that all these people are like, yeah, of course we'll do that again. Of course, you know, everybody really enjoyed doing it. And it was a very friendly group. So it was like, it was nothing toxic about it. So I think, so we're looking to shoot in the same time frame of year because it's between shows. So we get the best crew. So that'll be probably spring of this next year.
Nice.
And we're gonna have, we're doing our first reading in October. You know, just a rough read through, because what it does is it allows Lindsay to hear the words as opposed to reading them. And so when she hears the words, then she does little niggle polishes to enhance the dialogue, which is just, you know, she's such a pro, incredible, so much talent there. But that's the big deal. Yeah, there's going to be another one. And we're going to work very hard on it.
We joked about that in another interview that we did. We talked about King of Knives too, and we kind of chuckled about it. But I'm so glad this comes to fruition.
I was not going to talk about it at all until I knew that we had something that we could be proud of, and that we, you know, and so I think, you know, it all starts with the script, and I think the script is great. I think it pushes boundaries even more than the first film, not in a negative way, not in a shock value way. I mean, I think some people might be, you know, if you take New York City values and you show them to some people, they're going to, you know, it's their right to go, not into it, no thanks, don't like drugs, and that's fine. God bless you. You know, it's like, you don't, I always say that you don't have to see the movie. It's not for you. It's fine. It's specifically meant for people who want. But for me, from the beginning of our conversation, the real point of all this was that we have ended up talking through what I used to do so much in my brain. And that led up to the first film after all these years. And now, now that we've done this one, which was like a great dress rehearsal, right? Now we know exactly what we want to do. And what we're also trying to make sure of, which is a thing that's really, really tough to do. I think it's harder with big major studio films because of the structure. But in an independent film too, you have to be so careful that you don't fall in love with your poop too much. And you have to make sure that you're truly turning the corner with the next film. and you can't fall in love with it just because you have to always respect the fact that just because you did one thing well, it doesn't mean the next one's going to be just as good. And I've always spent a lot of time analyzing, now, why was this film not as good as this? Why did some sequel not pan out? And it usually comes down to A, there's not enough to talk about really that's dramatic enough, or B, it's too much of a repetition of the first one. So what has to be is that the task is harder. You know, like for instance, you look at Terminator and Terminator 2. Terminator 2 was the wow. Terminator 1 was the warm-up for Terminator 2, as it should be, right? But there are other films where you go to the first one, then you go to the second one, and it's like, man, you know, it's not doing it for me. It seems like the ground is being retread, and you can't retread. It has to be fresh, new attitudes. There's definitely a larger cast in this movie. And that's on purpose. And there's a different way of telling the story a little bit, which I think you'll find interesting with one particular character and Frank. And that's all I'm going to say right now. But it's and you heard it here first.
I appreciate that. You gave me an exclusive. I so appreciate that.
No
and I've
problem.
been forward to the sequel. I enjoyed the first one. So yeah, I'll be right there. Actually, I hope you have a premiere. I want to be on the carpet.
Oh yeah, my hope I would love to have a premiere without lockdown. It would be great. So we'll drink to that and hope for that and everything. And so are you excited about your change as well? I mean, this is like your next movie coming up here. Your life.
I'm excited. But also at the same time, I'm scared to death. It's new territory. But every so often in my life, it's a thing of mine. I have to shake it up. It gets exciting. Move up another level. Rinse and repeat.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And if we didn't have the fear, then it would be too easy. It would mean that that next step's too easy.
Yeah. So I had an aunt tell me one time, she's very insightful, and she was teaching me about the levels of life. And she basically described it as, you're on a certain level. You only can stay there for so long. It begins to get uncomfortable. You become irritable. Nothing works anymore. And it's because you need to elevate and move to the next. And a lot of people get stuck in between levels. And they wake up and time has just passed by and they're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, miserable, because they haven't taken a step out on faith or chance to elevate.
And listen, I'll say from vast experience here that not every chance you take is going to work.
Exactly.
There were absolute times when I went down a fork and I thought, and actually one of them was because I could make more money and support my family. Mm-hmm. But I just didn't enjoy the job as well. It didn't, and so my wife at that time, gave me the support. Say, well, go do what you need to do, Mm-hmm. But still, so there's always these things in life. There's responsibilities, there's choices, and but when it comes down to it, it's like if you don't try it, you'll never know. And there's no shame in having to back up the truck a little, go down another route.
That's true. But also, too, sometimes that misstep is an educational moment. You're supposed to take that misstep because there's something that you needed there. There's a lot of people that like to jump from A to J. But what about what's in between? What's in between is the nutrients. You can't enjoy J or fully appreciate J unless you've had B, C, D. You need all that. So,
and that's a natural thing. And I will say to you with honest truth that I also was guilty of that. I was saying I want to go from here to here, so I'm going to try to go here, and it's like, who the F are you? What? Get out of here! You don't know what you're doing. Learn something, you idiot. It's like, oh, okay, all right, I'll go back here and step it up. So you know, life is like that. And I get that sense from you, always have that. It shows on your face, I swear, is that life is an adventure and you've embraced it.
Yeah.
And you fully embrace it. And I think that's really the secret to happiness in my mind is not avoiding things in life, but embracing them, trying them. If they don't work, it's okay. You can always step back. And as I always used to say to myself, well, I could always go back to one time in my life I was a soda jerk. Truth. One of my friends from school came in, and he was kind of a privileged guy, and he saw me in it doing a job paying $1.75. He's like, you know, the soda jerk, and he's like, Gene, what are you doing here? As if my being there was not allowed. And it's like, I'm working. What are you doing? You know, because I always wanted to get to work. Wanted to work. You know, that's why I didn't finish college. That's well known. So this is no secrets here. But I went through 2 years of college, and I said, F this. I want to work. And so I became a recording engineer, and I was very glad I did. So, you see what I'm saying? Everybody makes their own choices, but you gotta go after it, keep climbing, and you will absolutely have times, and there are times when you sit there in life and you go, this is depressing. You know, if that didn't happen, there'd be something wrong, because we also know people where the steps have come too easy. And then they think that that's the way it is, that it never goes down. And then you see some terrible trip and fall like you've never seen.
Yeah. So the adapting mechanism isn't quite so sharpened to be able to deal when you've become accustomed to certain things. You know, the rocky road, the terrain, you won't be able to handle because you don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah, you got it. You got it. It's good. It's good stuff. And
yeah,
I'm glad we got this done. I'm so happy. I just to let everybody know that's listening, I was a frantic, talk about falling on my sword. The stupid software on my phone had updated, the operating system operated, and all of a sudden Instagram didn't know what to do. I pushed the button. All right, go live. Do you want to use your camera? Yes. Yes. No. Do you want to use your camera? Yes. Yeah. I was, you ask my wife, I was freaking the F out because, and the other thing with me is like, I never want to let people down, and I was letting you down. It was killing me. Oh, how embarrassing. So I am so glad we got to do this anyway.
Yeah, we're all good, brother. No worries. We get it done. And I so appreciate you for your time and your energy and your awesome talent. I'm sure we'll definitely be talking again. I want to be involved in this project any way, shape, or form. You need my help, call me. You know, I'm no novice to filmmaking. You know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, you have multiple tentacles everywhere. Yes. Such a great. So listen, enjoy the rest of your day, and
brother, and thank you so much for this.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
All right, have a good one.
Take care of yourself. All righty, bye.
Bye.